When I first moved out on my own after college, I decided it was finally time to put away the ramen and learn how to cook for myself properly. I just landed a decent job, and my new apartment, a small cozy place in an old building, was my first real step into adulthood. I was excited to make it my own, to prove I could handle life without the safety net of dorms or my parents' kitchen. That's when I found it, an old cookbook tucked away inside a dusty cabinet above the stove. The book looked ancient, its leather cover was cracked and peeling, and the pages were yellowed and brittle. I figured it had been left behind by a previous tenant, some quirky keepsake from a bygone era. Flipping through it, I landed on a recipe for pancakes. It seemed simple enough: flour, eggs, milk, and a pinch of salt. Perfect for a beginner like me. But the instructions were also odd. They read like something out of a fairy tale, with lines like, "Stir thrice clockwise until the light of the waning moon," and "Offer the first bite to the shadows." I laughed it off as some eccentric chef's gimmick and decided to give it a shot. I mean, how hard could pancakes be? That evening, I gathered the ingredients and got to work. The batter came together fine, but when I poured it into the hot pan, something felt off. The pancakes didn't cook evenly, some parts puffed up like blisters while others stayed flat and doughy. A strange smell wafted up too, sweet but with a sharp, metallic edge. I chalked it up to my inexperience. After all, I'd burned toast before, and this couldn't be much worse. When I sat down to eat, the pancakes didn't taste right. They weren't bad, exactly, but there was this weird aftertaste, like copper or ash, that stuck in the back of my throat. Still, I ate them all. I wasn't about to waste my first home-cooked meal, no matter how mediocre it turned out. That night, I had the strangest dream. I was back in my kitchen, standing over the stove, but the pancakes weren't just sitting in the pan, they were moving. Writhing and pulsating, like they had a heartbeat. They grew bigger, spilling over the edges of the plate and then the table, until the whole room was drowning in this thick, doughy mass. I woke up gasping, my shirt soaked in sweat. It was just a nightmare, I told myself, probably from eating too close to bedtime, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the unease. The next day, I made the pancakes again, same recipe, same weird instructions. This time, the metallic smell was stronger, and I swear I saw the batter ripple in the bowl before I poured it. The pancakes tasted even stranger, but I kept eating. I don't know why. It was almost as if I couldn't stop myself. That's when things started getting weird. I'd be sitting in my living room, and out of nowhere I'd hear whispers, soft, scratchy voices I couldn't quite make out. I'd catch glimpses of shadows darting across the walls, too fast to follow. At first I thought it was stress. Moving out, starting a new job, it's a lot to handle. Maybe I was imagining things, but deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. By the third night, I was hooked on those pancakes. I'd come home from work exhausted and head straight to the kitchen to whip up a batch. The cookbook stayed open on the counter, and one evening as I glanced at it, the words seemed to shift. The recipe page shimmered and new lines appeared. With each bite, you invite us in. With each meal, we grow stronger. My stomach dropped. I slammed the book shut and tossed it in the trash, hand shaking, but it was too late. That night, the dreams turned into something else, something real. I woke up to the sound of sizzling, like someone was cooking in my kitchen. I stumbled out of bed and froze. The cookbook was back on the counter, open to the pancake recipe. The stove was on, and a pan sat there, empty but smoking. Then I saw it, a shadow, humanoid but wrong, standing in the corner. Its head was tilted, and I swear it smiled. The next morning I tried to throw the book out again, ripped it up, stuffed it in a dumpster 3 blocks away. But when I got home, it was there, waiting on the counter, whole again. That's also when the pancakes started showing up on their own. I'd wake up to stacks of them on my table, still warm, with that same metallic stench. One night, I caught them moving, sliding across the plate, folding into shapes that looked almost like faces. I stopped sleeping. My dreams were full of those things, grotesque, pancake-like creatures with dripping doughy flesh and hollow eyes. They chased me through endless kitchens, whispering my name. During the day, I'd feel them watching me. My temper flared at nothing, and I couldn't focus. My boss even sent me home early one day because I looked so wrecked. Desperate, I started digging online. After hours of searching, I found a forum post about my building. Decades ago, an occultist lived there, some nutcase obsessed with dark rituals. He'd written a cookbook, they said, filled with recipes that weren't just food. They were spells. Ways to summon things, and to feed them. I'd been feeding them. I didn't know what else to do, so I called a priest. He was skeptical, but when I showed him the book, and when it opened itself in front of him, he believed me. We burned it in my sink, chanting prayers as the flames ate through the pages. The air grew heavy, and I heard this awful screech, like something was being torn away. And then it stopped. The shadows vanished, and the whispers went quiet. I haven't made pancakes since. Honestly, I haven't cooked anything. I'm back on ramen, and I'm fine with that. Whatever was in that book, whatever I let in, it's gone, for now. But sometimes, late at night, I smell that metallic tang in the air, and I wonder if they're really gone, or if they're just waiting for me to pick up a spatula again. When we were little kids, my sister Emily and I loved the pancakes our mom made. I still have no idea how exactly she made them, but of course they were perfect. That is, except for this one time when they apparently didn't have her specific mix at the store. It was a dreary Sunday morning, the kind where the sky hangs low and gray, casting a muted light through our kitchen windows. Emily and I sat at the table, our feet swinging beneath us, practically drooling as the familiar smell of pancakes filled the air. Mom stood by the stove, her apron dusted with flour, but there was a slight frown on her face. They didn't have my usual mix, she said, shaking a strange, faded box I'd never seen. This was all they had left on the shelf. I hope it's still good. We didn't care much. Pancakes were a treat no matter what. Our mom poured the batter onto the griddle, and it sizzled in a way that seemed louder than usual, almost like a hiss. The pancakes came out golden brown, but they had a faint reddish tint around the edges, like they'd been kissed by something unnatural. I brushed it off as a trick of the light and dug in anyway. The first bite was off. It was sweet, sure, but there was a sharp, sour note that lingered on my tongue, like biting into something that had started to rot. Emily made a face too, but she shrugged and kept eating. Mom didn't seem to notice anything strange. She just smiled and asked if we wanted more syrup. I forced down a few more bites, but each one felt heavier, like it was sticking in my throat. After breakfast, the day took a weird turn. The house felt different, quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was as if the air had thickened. I kept catching glimpses of shadows darting along the walls, quick and fleeting, like they were playing hide and seek. Emily didn't say anything, but I noticed her fidgeting more than usual, her eyes darting to the kitchen every few minutes. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but there was another sound, faint at first, like a low murmur coming from downstairs. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor, and tiptoed to the staircase. The noise grew clearer as I descended, a soft, rhythmic chant, guttural and wrong, echoing from the kitchen. I peeked around the corner and froze. The leftover pancakes sat on the counter in a neat stack, untouched since breakfast. But they weren't still. They twitched, small jerky movements, like something inside was trying to break free. The top pancake slid to the side, revealing a dark, wet stain on the one beneath it, pulsating like a heartbeat. I blinked, and the stack was normal again, but my chest tightened with dread. I didn't tell Mom or Dad. They think I was crazy. But the next morning, Emily looked pale, her eyes sunken like she hadn't slept either. "Did you hear it?" she whispered when we were alone. "The voices?" "What voices?" I asked, though my stomach sank because I knew exactly what she meant. "They were in my head," she said, her voice trembling, "telling me to eat more, telling me they're hungry." I wanted to laugh it off, but the fear in her eyes stopped me. That day, strange things kept happening. The kitchen smelled faintly of sulfur, even though Mom hadn't cooked since breakfast. I found a pancake crumb on the floor, and when I picked it up, it felt warm, too warm, like it had just come off the griddle. Later, Emily drew a picture in her notebook, a stack of pancakes with jagged teeth and glowing eyes. Only, she didn't remember drawing it. By Tuesday night, the situation spiraled. We were eating dinner, normal food, not pancakes, when the lights dimmed and a cold breeze swept through the room, though all the windows were shut. A low growl rumbled from the kitchen, deep and menacing. Dad got up to check, his face tight with annoyance, but he came back pale. "Nothing there," he muttered, but he locked the kitchen door behind him, a door we never locked. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep and crept downstairs with a flashlight. The kitchen was silent, but the air felt heavy and oppressive. The pancakes were still on the counter, though Mom swore she'd thrown them out. I edged closer, my flashlight beam trembling, and that's when I saw it. The stack was taller than before, at least 10 pancakes high. I was sure Mom had only made 6. They glistened under the light, slick and oily, and then they moved. The top one flopped onto the counter with a wet slap, revealing a face, not a human face, but something twisted. It had hollow sockets and a wide, drooling mouth made of dough. I stumbled back as the stack began to shift, the pancakes stacking and unstacking themselves, forming a shape that towered over me. The chanting started again, loud and insistent, vibrating in my skull. Feed us, feed us. I grabbed a knife from the block and stabbed at the mass, but the blade sank in like it was cutting through mud. Then a black tar-like substance oozed out, burning my hand where it touched. I screamed and the lights flared back on. My parents rushed in, but the pancakes were just a pile again, the knife stuck in the counter, no trace of the black ooze. They yelled at me, thinking I'd lost it, but Emily stood in the doorway, nodding silently like she'd seen it too. The next day, I convinced Mom to let me help throw out the trash. I buried that mix box deep in the bin, but not before noticing something scratched into the faded label, a symbol, jagged and crude, like the ones Emily had drawn. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them to think I was making it up. We stopped eating pancakes after that, and Mom never bought that brand again. Months passed, and the house settled back into its old rhythm. But sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up to the faint smell of pancakes cooking, even though the kitchen was empty. Once, I found a single pancake on my pillow, perfectly round with that same reddish tint. I burned it in the backyard, never told a soul. To this day, I can't walk past the breakfast aisle without feeling watched. And every so often, when the house is too quiet, I swear I hear that chant again, soft and distant. It's like it's waiting for me to take another bite. I work as a chef at a small diner on the edge of our town, which for privacy reasons I won't mention. I actually won't share hardly any details, because I don't want them to somehow find me again. It was one of those nights where the air felt heavy, the kind that makes your skin prickle for no reason. The diner was nearly empty, just me and the hum of the old refrigerator in the back. Around midnight, the bell above the door chimed and a lone customer shuffled in. They wore a tattered coat, hood pulled low, and sat in the booth farthest from the light. Without looking up, they rasped, "Pancakes, just pancakes." I nodded and headed to the kitchen. The pancake mix was in a rusty tin I'd never noticed before, tucked behind the usual bags. The label was faded, smeared with something dark, grease maybe. I shrugged it off and started mixing. The batter was thick, almost gluey, and it clung to the whisk like it didn't want to let go. When I poured it onto the griddle, it didn't spread naturally. It just sat there, forming perfect, unnaturally smooth circles. A faint smell hit me, not the warm sweetness you'd expect, but something sour, like milk gone bad mixed with rust. I flipped the pancakes, and they were flawless, golden brown, no imperfections. It was almost like they were too perfect. As I stacked them on a plate, I noticed the edges trembling slightly, like they were breathing. I told myself it was the heat playing tricks on my eyes, and carried them out. The customer didn't move as I set the plate down. I turned to walk away, but a low, guttural sound stopped me, a whisper coming from the table. I glanced back and saw that the pancakes were shifting. They slid across the plate, stacking themselves into a crooked tower. My stomach dropped. The whispering grew louder, a jumble of voices overlapping, saying things I couldn't make out but that made my chest tighten. The customer finally raised their head, and the hood slid back. The face was gaunt, eyes pitch black, like holes punched into their skull. A slow, crooked grin spread across their lips as the pancakes began to writhe, flattening and stretching into grotesque shapes. They were faces, hands, and claws, pressed into the dough like it was alive. "You woke us," the voices said, now clear and booming, echoing from the pancakes themselves. I stumbled back, knocking over a salt shaker. The stack lurched forward, sliding off the table and hitting the floor with a wet slap. It started dragging itself toward me, leaving a trail of batter that hissed and smoked on the tiles. I ran to the kitchen, slamming the door and shoving a cart against it. The whispering turned into a screech, clawing out my ears. I grabbed a knife, but what good was that against whatever this was? Then I remembered the tin. I found it on the counter, and up close, I saw the dark smears weren't grease, they were symbols. They were jagged and wrong, etched into the metal. The door rattled, and I acted on instinct. I dumped the rest of the mix into the sink, doused it with lighter fluid from the supply closet, and set it ablaze. The flames roared up, and the screeching hit a fever pitch, shaking the walls. Black smoke poured out, stinking of sulfur and burnt sugar, and then silence. When I peeked out, the diner was empty. The customer was gone, the pancakes too, just a scorch mark on the floor where they'd fallen. I quit that night, left town, and swore I'd never step foot in a kitchen again. But some mornings, I wake up to that sour, rusty smell in my apartment, And once, just once, I found a single pancake on my counter, perfectly round, edges trembling. I burned it in the sink and moved again. I don't know how long I can keep running.